This is Viva Fry.
I'm Dr. Peter McCullough.
This is Tom Luongo.
This is Chuck Prodnick.
This is Alex Kreiner.
Hey, this is Brad Wall.
This is JP Sears.
Hi, this is Frank Peretti.
This is Tammy Peterson.
This is Danielle Smith.
This is James Lindsay.
Hey, this is Brett Kissel, and you're listening to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. How's everybody doing today? Happy Thursday. I'm getting my voice back, and it feels good. All right. Happy Thursday, everyone. All right. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, store precious metals, look no further than my friends over at Silver Gold Bull. Yeah, they're helping bring not only the Cornerstone Forum, along with Bow Valley Credit Union, that is, to Calgary this year and last year, but they also deal with all your precious metal needs here in Canada, specifically located in headquartered out of Calgary. Yep, got their start in Rocky Mountain House. So whether you're buying, selling, or storing precious metals, text or email Graham for some details down in the show notes. He'll give you he'll answer all your questions around investing in precious metals or for future silver deals exclusively offered for you, the SMP listener. silvergoldbull.ca.com, depending which side of the border you are on. Guardian Plumbing and Heating. These guys have been keeping homes, farms, and businesses running smoothly since 2010. Whether it's expert service, cutting-edge power solutions, or advice you can trust, Guardian Plumbing and Heating has your back. For all those farmers out there, they have the efficient grain dryers and Guardian power stations. They aren't just available here in Lloydminster. They're available all across Canada. The power station is an absolute game changer, giving you 2-for-1 utilities, heat, and electricity from the same reliable system. It's an innovative way to keep your operation running efficiently and save on energy costs. You can find out more at guardianplumbing.ca. Ignite Distribution is a high-service supply company based in Wainwright, Alberta, specializing in automotive parts and a wide range of additional products, including safety equipment, welding supplies, fasteners, and janitorial items. Operating as a Napa auto parts retailer, Ignite Distribution emphasizes, well, they got exceptional customer service, folks. And they're going to take care of all your inventory management that slows you down, probably gives you some headaches. They can take care of that. They're gonna stock your shelves. All right, they're gonna make sure I'm feeling good. All right, I got my voice back. I don't know if you heard that the first time. Yeah, they're gonna be helpful on the back end of running your business, making sure it doesn't have any down days. Shane Stafford, 780-842-3433. Tell them I sent you. All right, the Cornerstone Forum. March 28th, sold out, but okay. All right. I've been having a few texts asking, but I can't even be there. How do I? Are you taping it? Yes, we're filming it. So are you live streaming it? No, I'm not live streaming. We're not live streaming, but the way you can watch for $8, I believe it is. And maybe I'm getting this wrong. I'm going to have somebody, forgive me, I think it's $8, but for some reason I'm laughing at myself right now because I'm going to get a text. You just need to become a paid subscriber on Substack for a month. And essentially you can watch the entire Cornerstone Forum basically the week after it happens, okay? Last year we released it Monday through Thursday roughly in its entirety, and the same thing will be true this year. So if you're interested but you can't get there, you can't get a ticket, all the things, it will come out the following week so that you can watch all the conversations that happen on stage. So become a paid member of Substack. It's probably the best perk of being a paid member of Substack that you can get, and that is the entire Cornerstone Forum. You can go back and watch the 2 previous Cornerstone Forums if you're a paid member of Substack. Just throwing that out there. All right. If you're listening or watching on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, Substack. I don't know. I don't know what. I must have said Substack many times there. My voice is back. My brain is not. Wherever you're watching, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to leave a review. Make sure to enjoy your Thursday wherever you're at and share with a friend. All right? Voice is back. Feeling good. And happy to be here on a Thursday. All right. Let's get on to that. Tale of the tape. Today's guest is an American comedian, musician, entrepreneur, and known as the Pickup Pundit. I'm talking about Chad Prather. So buckle up. Here we go. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Chad Prather. Sir, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you again. I'm looking forward to seeing you in person here in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, March 28th, and it's a sellout, Chad. I don't know if I told you that yet.
I'd love to be able to take credit for that, but I've seen all the marketing that you've done, so I'll let you have this one, Sean.
Well, I put it in the big man's hands all the time when I'm worried about stuff like this. So I think it's going to be a fun day, and the people that are coming, all the speakers, there's enough diversity there on thought. I think the discussions are going to be something worthy of sitting in as well. Yeah, I think that's why it's a sellout. Personally,
I'm looking forward to being there. It's always a good time to get kind of out of your comfort zone. In Canada, I love going to Alberta. Actually, it's Western Canada. I was going to say Canada's about as far out of my comfort zone as I can get in a lot of cases, but Alberta not so much. Texas of the North, I can kind of relate to that. I always have a good time when I'm in the area up there.
Yeah, Alberta is a beautiful place, and it's filled with a lot of common sense, critical thinkers, I would say. Now, one of the things I wanted to start off with you with is, right now, I don't know what it is about X. Maybe it's always been this way. But there seems to be a ton of noise. And then you got to sit back as an average person and try and handle all that noise, which then it probably becomes a touch stressful. And I was telling you before we started, I listened to Before the Noise this morning, and I looked back on our first time we talked, which wasn't that long ago. It used to be 15 minutes. And I'm like a half an hour in. I'm like, I thought this was 15 minutes. Anyways, it was an hour or maybe a touch over. And I'm like, man, this is enjoyable. And I mean, rightfully titled Before the Noise. At home, I sit and I listen. I read the Bible every morning, and it's kind of my moment of peace before the world does what the world does. Your experience with Before the Noise, because it hasn't been 20 years of doing this.
Right. No, so Before the Noise is I guess, for lack of a better term, just a podcast, and it didn't start out that way. I had an idea last year. So going back even further, a month prior to the 2024 election, I just felt impressed to start posting prayers for our nation and for the election and just for the circumstances of the world. And the election came and went, and then I just felt impressed to keep posting prayers every day. I'd post them on social media, on Facebook, on X, and I was writing these prayers out. And then so I continued doing that. I'm still doing it to this day, most days of the week. I might miss one here or there, but out of all of that, I just felt impressed one night to start doing, just sharing my Bible reading time in the mornings with everybody for about 10 or 15 minutes, my devotional thoughts. And then the audience started growing, and Rumble came along and said, we'd like to feature that in the mornings. And so we started turning it into an hour-long program, which is an incredible blessing. It's a lot of work, but it's an incredible blessing. It's truly the highlight of my day. I look forward to it. Now we have, 100, 200,000 people watching that every day. And so it's been this incredible blessing. All these things have cropped out of it. And the Before the Noise concept came because I'm a guy who, like many of us, has made a living talking about the headlines, talking about what's going on in our world, the cultural shifts, the crazy trends, the outrage, the things that we see that trigger us day in and day out. And I just realized it was starting to sap my soul. It was really sucking the life out of me. And it was becoming a weight. It was becoming a weight that I didn't want to carry anymore, because you can't keep up with it. And to the point you made a minute ago, Sean, you just can't carry that. We're not built to carry all the world's problems. And we've internalized it. We've manufactured outrage and oppression in such a way that we feel like we have to be intimately involved with every single thing that comes along. I have to be a geopolitical expert. I've got to be a virologist. I've got to be a theologian. I mean, you name it, we're supposed to be experts. I wrote a book back in 2020 called Am I Crazy? And I tell people that the only thing really worth reading in that book is the introduction. It's really the only the rest of it's humor. The only thought-provoking part is the introduction of the book. And in that, I said, social media has lied to us on a couple of different fronts two of the biggest ones is it's made everybody believe that they are in some ways a celebrity or an authority on something. And the second one is that we're all experts. So we're all experts and we have an audience. So we have this weird notion that we're famous and our voice matters, and that people are listening, and that we're experts on something. I've decided I'm not really an expert on anything. Like I'm just not. I'm a human being that's trying to figure out his own life as a father, as a man, as a, fill in the blank, check off the list. I want to live the best possible life in this short little blip that we have on the radar. And I realized that if I don't get my perspective right before the noise, because I still will deal with the headlines, I'll still deal with the cultural trends that are happening. But for me in these days, I've taken on a new perspective. The perspective has got to be we've approached a kingdom. We've received a kingdom as believers, as Christians. The writer of Hebrews says we've received this kingdom which cannot be shaken. And while everything else in our world is being shaken, we've got to learn how to relate in our place in this kingdom which can't be shaken. Because otherwise we're going to get shook. You hold on to the thing that's shaking, it's going to shake you as well. And so I'm trying to approach everything from a foundational perspective of faith first. There is a God who is in control of human history. I'm not a deist that believes that God just wound us up like a clock and turned us loose to run out, when the springs unwind. I don't believe that we are in spiritual entropy, which everything in motion tends to fall apart. I think that God is the guiding factor. He is in control, and he can be known. We can not only know him, we can know about him, we can know his ways, we can know how he's revealed himself through the person of Jesus Christ. And so I'm approaching this thing, Western civilization, and then the unfolding of other civilizations around us, because as we were talking before we started recording, the internet's made the world a real small place. And we are immediately affected by things that are happening on the globe that historically we might not have been affected by so quickly. But now it's almost at the speed of thought. And so I want to make sure that my worldview is right, my belief system, my paradigm, my Weltanschauung, whatever you want to call that. My way of looking at this world is centered in a biblical root and foundation. And that's the journey that I'm on. And so I was in a hotel room somewhere in America, and I woke up about 3:00 in the morning. And I said, well, because I don't know how you are, but when I wake up, I'm sort of awake. Like my brain starts working again. And I'm like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. So I looked at the clock. It was 3:00. And I just kind of, this phrase popped into my head. I said, well, I guess I'm up before the noise. And so that's where the title for that came from. And I think it's resonated with a lot of people. And so that's sort of the foundation of everything that I'm doing in these days.
Well, the thing I liked about it, once again, a believer, right? So you hop on and it's not the headlines, right? It's not the noise. It is just like, simply put, a Bible study. I think that'd probably be the easiest way. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, man, I wonder if I put this on while I'm working out, if I'm just calm or if I'm annoyed because I'm trying to listen now and lift weights and I can't seem to do two things at once. Yeah. But I just found it very calming. And most things, when you're trying to grab, I don't know the audience, but I don't know how many things you listen to in a day, Chad. I was coming back from Panama City, okay? And I'm flying. I get there, back to Calgary, then I got to drive 5 hours. So what do? I don't get to drive that much anymore. Mm-hmm. So I throw on 3 different podcasts. And by the end of it, I am wound up. I'm like, my brain's wound up. Everything's wound up. I'm like, oh, why I wanted to do this, but now I'm like, I'm not so sure anymore. Because like, as I learn more, now I got to think about things and then I got to try and bring on the guests to try and unwind my brain. If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And that's, I'm a thinker. I don't know that my thoughts are always right or that my thoughts are always deep, but I'm always thinking, and thinking hurts. It's uncomfortable if you do it right. Typically my thinking, and if I think I'm right in this, that critical thinking, which is a lost art, I try to think critically. And my first rule of critical thinking is the question, how am I wrong on this? So I'm always coming from the perspective of how am I wrong? Because a lot of times we start with, this is how I'm right. I know I'm right. I feel right. Well, maybe what if you're not? And so I get pretty wound up on that of going, okay, where am I wrong on this? Let me approach this. Let me fact check myself if I can and see if I can get to some basis of truth. And then laying down my pride enough to say, all right, this does need to be modified a little bit, because if I don't do that, then I'm just rehearsing the talking points that the big voices out there want me to repeat. The Bible says that John the Baptist was the voice of one crying out in the wilderness. He was not an echo. He wasn't saying what other prophets had said. He was the voice. He was a unique voice. And I think we've lost unique voices. And so I try to listen to those that I feel look at reality and can take a different perspective, maybe come in the back door or the side door a little bit, and they approach it from an angle maybe we don't immediately think about. So I think there's something to that, getting wound up. It's the issue with our culture these days, Sean, is we don't know how to get unwound. And I think that's the big problem there. And like you said, this being a Bible study like Before the Noise, I'll go back and just clarify something. I made a choice not to make that topical. So in other words, I don't come in and say, hey, this is the topic of the day. No, we work verse by verse through the scripture. And so we've done the book of John, the book of Acts, we've done the book of Ephesians, we've done the Sermon on the Mount. We've now finished, at the time of this recording today, we finished the book of Hebrews. And so I'm just letting the verses say what they want to say. That way it's not Chad saying, this is what I want to talk about today. And it's amazing how that helps me to see that the scripture really sort of addresses the things that we are dealing with without our preconceived notions of reading into, and then I'm going to go find a verse that fits what I want to talk about. So again, those are certain things that I think if we'll just approach truth, if we'll approach God, if we approach our faith from the perspective of, hey, I'm just walking through this. I am kind of wound up. I'm fired up. I don't know how to let go of certain things. You know, I can't fix the world, but I know one who can, and I know one who is. He hasn't left us. He hasn't forsaken us, right? And again, I go back to Hebrews 12:28. We've received a kingdom that can't be shaken, and so let us worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. And I think that's something that we've lost, is that reverence and awe of just taking that moment and saying, hey, the world's going to shake, man. And I got to figure out a way to not hold on to that so tightly, right? And that's a hard thing to do. That's for sure. It's a hard thing to do.
I like this line. This wasn't this morning. I was paying attention to it a while back, and I just remember I wrote it down, and then for this morning I wrote it out. Because, you know, I'm a guy that once upon a time, Chad, was all about sports. And then through that, journey, got into politics, and I've focused a lot on politics for the last however many years, right? And I've said, I don't know if I really enjoy any one politician. I feel like they say one thing and then go do another. And I've found very few politicians that are just who they say they are.
True.
Now, your line was, I think this was your line, and maybe you credit to somebody else, but Jesus is still on the throne, and the throne is not up for re-election. I was like, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I've often said, you know, he's not subject to the assassin bullet. He's not subject to the ballot box. You can't impeach him. He's not subject to the 25th Amendment. He's not up for re-election. He's not campaigning. We do have a king, and he's the king of the universe. And when you see that, and again, I know there's people probably who watch this or listen to this show, and they're like, all this faith gobbledygook and things. You know, I relate to that. I understand that. I've been in that place of spiritual drift or spiritual rebellion where I've looked for reality at the bottom of a bottle or the bottom of a bag of drugs or in, you know, sex or the things that men do. I mean, I've been in that world. And then one day your whole worldview gets upset when God decides to come walking through the living room and turns you into a bubbling pile of goo, and you realize just how broken of a human you are. And you say, there's got to be more than all of this. There's got to be more than just me getting emotionally affected and infected every day by what's trending on Twitter. There's got to be more than this. And, I look at these verses where it talks about this kingdom being shaken, and I realize that book of Hebrews, and it's fresh on my mind because we've been working through it, it was written to people who were living in political instability. They were living in persecution. They were living in the midst of collapsing institutions. And their mindset was, let's go back to the old way of doing things, because that at least was familiar. And so the key for them was not escapism. The writer says it's about reorientation. We've got to recognize that everything that's built by human hands, it's designed by its very nature to shake. It's going to shake. And he says God's going to shake it. He's going to shake heaven and earth. And that shaking reveals what's temporary. Everybody gets up in arms here in America. Everybody, no matter what conversation you get into with somebody, by the third comment of the discussion or debate, it turns into orange man is bad, right? Donald Trump is the evil one. And everybody, they immediately, rather than, the debate, the discussion, the dialogue, it immediately devolves. It just falls apart into the name calling and that. And I'm like, we can't even have a 3-comment conversation without watching the shaking happen. And every generation has learned a really hard lesson. Empires fall. People we put on a pedestal get knocked off. They come, they go, they die. Markets collapse. Political movements fracture. Cultural trends reverse. One day you're on the good side of things. I was invited to the White House to meet with J.D. Vance and Carolyn Levitt to talk about the first 100 days of the I was invited about where they were going in the first 100 days. I was invited to the White House to meet with them February 27th of last year. And Pam Bondi comes in and drops these Epstein binders in our lap and says, this is the first phase. We're going to start releasing information about Jeffrey Epstein. We thought we were doing a good thing by saying, look, the administration is going to do something about this. Well, then our pictures get plastered all over the mainstream media, and we're public enemy number one, because now we're being accused of trying to cover up things, because what was released wasn't any new information other than the fact that Pam Bondi said that there was 10,000 documents that she had never seen on a desk somewhere in a field office for the FBI in New York. And we were going, hey, they're doing something. And everybody came at us because they were mad. And we were like, wait a second. I thought we were all on the same side of wanting to get to the bottom of this stuff. And now, so again, the cultural trends, and today you're on, today you're all working together on this. Well, then there's a shift, and now everything is Israel's fault, and everything is Trump's fault, and everything is, and we're going, hey, what we're witnessing in the modern world, I can't keep up with it, but it's not a new thing. It's the exposure of fragile systems. And the shaking that happens is not random. It's actually surgical and diagnostic. God's shaking us so that we'll stop building our lives on the things that can't carry the weight of eternity, right? So I've got to look to that King. I've got to look to that Jesus, who can't be impeached, can't be dethroned. He can't be elected out. And I find some hope in that, and I hope others do as well.
I was just gonna add in. You mentioned being in, the bottom of the bottle, the drugs, the women, that type of thing. And I don't know if my brain took it the right way, Chad, but I was the way I was listening to it, it was looking for there has to be more, and you're searching it out in those realms. And what I was going to add in from where I stood is I used those things to numb the world because I couldn't understand what was going on. And once I realized that there was more going on and I actually wasn't going crazy, it actually helped with, I don't need to use these things to numb it, because there is a lot of beauty going on. There is actually more than the eye can see. And it was, I don't know if that, it's not an opposing view. It's a similar view, but the use of, say, alcohol was for two different reasons. I hope I'm saying that right.
No, you are, and I've done that too. I've been that way. I think with me, I think you're saying more adequately and eloquently what I'm trying to say, and that is you you're like, okay, I don't like the reality I'm living in. So I'm just going to either numb that reality, or I'm going to enter into another one through the use of these things. And that's going to help me cope with this. I don't think life is designed for us just to cope. I don't think that we're supposed to live on the mountaintop. I don't think we're supposed to live in the valleys. I think there should be a steady rhythm to life. I think that much of life seems kind of monotonous, as one foot in front of the other. It's another day after the next. And then you look back and you're like, wow, where's all the time gone, right? You look in the mirror and you're like, I didn't see myself aging like this. But through all of that, I think there is supposed to be something glorious about this life that we're missing. And we end up numbing ourselves with a lot of things. And I think the noise of the world, the chaos of the world, we've become internet junkies. We've become scrolling addicts. We've become doom scrollers. We've become news junkies. I know friends. I've got a dear buddy of mine. He works with me and works for me. If you go to his house, he's got Fox News. I mean, it's just that ticker is going. He stayed with me. I did an event in California last year, and he stayed in the same hotel room with me. Normally we don't do that, but this time he was in the same room, and we had one of those. It was a suite, so we had the living room over there too. 5 o'clock in the morning, he's got the news on, and I'm like, man, stop! Like, what are you doing? Like, you're poisoning. I said, you're not even watching it. You've just got it on. It's like speaking to your brain. He goes, I just turn it on, and I'm like, this is a weird phenomenon that we just have to be inundated with noise all the time. And so I think that's part of it. We're trying to numb ourselves to the reality of the world we're living in. Listen, men, and I love to talk to men because we got it all together, right? We know the end from the beginning. But men are so wounded. Like, men have been through some real trauma. We never really deal with a lot of the stuff. And I'm not talking about some kind of victimhood. I'm not saying that. We're not navel gazing and, oh, woe is me and all this nonsense. But men have been villainized. We've been told that our masculinity is toxic. We've been told that to be strong is to be evil. We've been told that to tell the truth is hate speech. And so now guys are going, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to become some kind of a, estrogen-filled, limp-wristed beta male just so that society will accept me? Well, obviously that's not the right way to go. But men, I think, are starving for truth. Men are starving for some kind of meaning, a sense of identity. And I think you and I have talked about this before, where you know where you came from, you know who you are, you know where you're going, you know what you're going to leave behind. That history, identity, destiny, legacy, we've lost those things. And so that transcendent meaning that's out there, being a part of a big story. God is he is writing this very big story. There's a meta narrative. And one of the worst parts about the day and age in which we live in is, and I've been preaching about this for 30 years, is the embracing of postmodernism. And postmodernism, it applies meaning to nothing unless it means something to me. So we get into your truth, my truth, and the Oprah Winfrey nonsense. But there's no meta narrative. There's no big story. And so therefore, I'm just a little player and probably a cosplayer in some kind of big cosmic joke. And I want to be more than that. I want to find myself deeper in that narrative that God's telling. So I see myself not as some culturally defined weakling that gets defined based on those shaking trends, but I want to know what God says about me, who he created me to be. I am an individual. There's never been another DNA like me. Even with the billions of people on the planet right now, there's not another fingerprint, not another voice, not another, firing synapse that works quite like my brain does. I'm a voice, I'm a vessel, I'm an instrument that God created to make a noise in this earth in the little time that I've got that no one in human history has ever been able to make. There's an amazing dignity to that. There's an amazing honor to that. There's this wild individuality. And then when you find yourself in that transcendent story, I think there's something that men particularly really need to find again. And a lot of us, we go to the gym and we make ourselves physically strong. But what are we doing internally? And I think that's something that a lot of us are missing.
Or it goes both ways. Like people who are spiritually strong and figuring out who they are, they don't go to the gym.
That's
Right?
true.
Right? Like you need to be physically and mentally strong.
And that is a biblical concept, by the way, being all of those things. They really are. Of course, at my age, I'm 53, and I've got to have surgery right after I come back from being with you in Calgary. I've got to come back and have surgery on this arm. I have a distal bicep tear. I did it on this arm back in 2018, and they had to reattach the bicep. Now, this was a sexy injury. I was wakeboarding. I was doing something, fun, frivolous, and masculine, right? This, I would love to say that I was pulling a car off of puppies and small children, but I was lifting a television to put it on a rack, and the bicep tore and ripped off. And I go, well, we really are getting older, and our bodies are doing things that they're not falling off, but they are falling apart. We're seeing that happen. So, yeah, I think it's a very, very good concept. We need to be treating ourselves internally, externally, our bodies, our souls, our mind, our spirit, our volition. All of those need to be strengthening more and more as we get older. And certainly I think that's a sign of maturity, right?
Yes. I mean, a couple of things I do that I'm not saying I'm a genius by any stretch. They've just worked for me, Chad. One is, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb once it hits 5 o'clock. So it doesn't mean I can't look at my phone. It just means it doesn't ding at me. Nothing comes through, right? Except for a few different family members who can get through that wall. As soon as I don't have my phone, it's funny how it doesn't happen day one. You find you're still checking your phone over and over again. But over time, its power over you is lessened to where you almost forget about it at times. You wake up in the morning, you put in routines that aren't check the what is happening in Iran, or, it can be whatever you want before that. It could have been Russia, Ukraine. It could still be Russia, Ukraine. It could be a lot of different things that get your brain going, and that's not a bad thing. And you replace it with, for me, waking up and reading Proverbs and a few other things. And it's you start the day with the right mentality to deal with the problems of the world.
Yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I'm trying to remember what exactly was the crisis of the day. What was the crisis du jour? Something was going on. Yeah, it'll come back to me. But
Mexico, Maduro.
It wasn't that. There was something that
ice in Minnesota.
People felt like I needed to know something about this. Like they really felt like I would be the expert on this topic. And it'll come to me. But anyway, that shows you where it placed on the priority list. But I had sort of done what you're talking about. I said, and I've sort of made this a habit in my life. It's a discipline, really, of just saying, I'm not going to cling to that so tightly. Like I'm not going to hang on every breaking news story. And so I had gone about 3 or 4 days, and these people were coming at me, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion? They demanded to know. I mean, they did too. They were demanding to know my opinion. Why aren't you saying anything about this? And I said, well, honestly, because I haven't heard about it. I don't know what's going on. I'll go look. And I've formed my opinion and shared it with people. Some liked it, some didn't. But I was like, I kind of like the fact that I didn't know what was going on. Like I didn't really know. I'm sure it was important in some people's lives, but a weird phenomenon is happening, Sean. A weird thing's happening. Like I said, we're supposed to be experts on all these things. But if you form an opinion that's in any way different from another person's opinion, you are the villain. You've become public enemy number one. You are no longer one of us. And that's another thing that we've gotten. It's very dangerous how we've become. America was built, Western civilization really was built on a few pretty cool ideals. And one of the things that was beautiful in the founding of this country, is that men could disagree. They could debate one another. They could dialogue and they could argue, but they had certain founding documents and principles that they were willing to come back to. Well, we've lost all of that. We don't have that anymore. We got to agree, and all the talking points have got to be there, or else there's going to be some influencer who's going to come along. It's got a couple thousand followers, and they're going to call you out. We're going to call you out. We're going to expose you. How dare you say something that I disagree with? That is a fragile society. Like, that's really a fragile society. And this demand that our favorite voices need to have some kind of expert opinion on it, that's a fragile society. I mean, you talk about the epitome of building your house on the sand. The storms are going to reveal that pretty quick. If I'm building my opinion, my worldview, my all of these things off of what the latest influencers had to say. Now, again, most people would push back and say, well, I don't do that. Yeah, but you do. I mean, it's just the nature of the world in which we live these days. You can't avoid the voices. And so I'm working on that too. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because I'm working real hard. It's real hard for me to. Now, my phone stays on silent. That's a long time discipline, but it's hard for me to take this supercomputer that I got with me at all times and just set it over here and forget about it. My father-in-law, he just turns his off and leaves it off all day long. And I'm like, hey, let's go fishing. And I haven't heard from him in 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, Tom's got his phone off. Like, I don't know, how do you live like that? That's radical. I mean, he just turns it off.
When I was in college, this is now this is 15 years ago when I graduated. But when I was in college, my wife, then girlfriend, everybody used to get annoyed because I didn't have a phone. Yeah. I didn't like having a phone. I didn't like people getting a hold of me. If they wanted to call me, I had a room line. They could call me there, and maybe I'd be there, maybe I wouldn't. So everybody would call her. Yeah. And she'd be like, yeah, oh, okay, good. And one of the things I hate about a phone, and enjoy too, right? Like, I mean, it's a love-hate relationship, is people can get a hold of you whenever they want. And if they don't hear from you, you know, it's like every second that goes by, they're like, oh, I wonder why he's not answering me, right? Yeah. And vice versa. Same thing goes on my end too, right? Text Chad. Chad doesn't answer right back. I go, I wonder if I said something wrong to Chad. I wonder if I did, you know? And it's funny how people's minds work, because it's not that long ago, this thing wasn't there. You didn't have any choice. You had to wait. You left a message. Chad will get back to you when Chad gets back to you. And it's a strange world we live in. I am happy. You know, one of the things for people coming to the forum, what you're talking about is the round table you're a part of. Why discussion is so important, and how there is literally no way with the pace of the world, Chad. I'm going from COVID. I was about to start writing them all out, and then I'm like, there's no way I can remember them all. You got COVID, right? You're on the right team, and you knew what was going on in COVID, and then the next thing comes, and then the next thing. And has anybody been noticing the pace at which is set now, where it's just coming? And in order to stay where you don't get something wrong, to where somebody that you were in alignment with 2 days ago doesn't hate you, is insanely impossible to keep. You have to, and then at some point you're just like, I just can't keep up. You said it earlier. You just can't keep up to how quickly things are happening. It's like, I'm supposed to be an expert on Iran. Are we serious right now? I've never been to Iran. Right. All I know about Iran is what has been told to me in headlines for the last 20 years. And I'm going to be honest, folks. Those same headlines told me what to think about COVID. I don't agree with them. So now I got to go spend time and try and figure it out.
Yeah, and you can't keep up with all that.
And you can't
keep up with all that. That's why in these days, what I have decided and kind of put my stake in the ground is I want to become a person who not an expert, but I want to gain an intimate knowledge of who God is, what his kingdom looks like, where I am in that big story. And be able to remind people the kingdom of God is not an ideology. It's not a voting block. It's not a cultural tribe. It's the reign of Christ over all things. John 18:36, Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, it doesn't mean that it has no effect on this world. It means that the source is not dependent on the world. The political systems are going to rise and fall, but Christ is already enthroned. So when he talks about, the throne not being up for election, I don't withdraw from society. I'm just not going to anchor my identity in it, right? Now, the early church, they lived under the Roman Empire, which is arguably one of the most powerful empires in history. But again, the believers, they describe themselves as being sojourners and exiles. Peter described them as being strangers and pilgrims. The reason is because their citizenship was somewhere else. Paul says to the Philippians, he says, our citizenship is in heaven. So that changes how we react to the headlines, right? So if our hope is tied to political outcomes and every election becomes an emotional earthquake, if my hope is tied to the kingdom of Christ, I got a different outlook, because now I can engage the world without being emotionally owned by it. And I can become a person that can't be shaken. Because I'm with you. I remember relying on payphones. Like, I used to keep a quarter with me. Some people went all the way back to having a dime. I was in the transition as a child from going from a payphone being a dime to a quarter, right? So I remember having to keep a quarter with me in case I ever had to make an emergency phone call. Like, that was, I can remember being, early on in the sales world, having to stop at a payphone. And then we had this thing called MapQuest, where you could get on the dial-up internet and you could print off
all your directions. Yes.
And you had that with you. I had to go make a sales call, and I was looking at my MapQuest. And like, you got people today. I literally said to someone last year, I said, you need to make sure you always have a road atlas. And someone that I know in their 20s, they said, I don't know what that is. Like, what's an atlas? What is it? I've never heard of that. And I'm like, it's a book with maps of everything. You need to have that. And you need to know how to read it. You need to have a compass with you. And they're like, I don't even know what that is. I mean, I've got a cell phone that tells me where to go. It talks to me and tells me. And so it's kind of scary when you think about how fragile, because of our dependence upon these things. I was laughing when you were telling the cell phone story, because I'm reminded of my friend Glenn Beck. Glenn, I was on the Blaze for 5 or 6 years on that network. And Glenn, people every now and then will reach out to me and say, can you help me get in touch with Glenn Beck? And I'm like, no. And Glenn doesn't live on the same planet we do. I mean, he's a different sort of dude, man. I mean, you talk about a guy whose brain works in a different way. But they're like, we really need Glenn's cell phone number. I said, Glenn does not have a cell phone. Glenn doesn't own a cell phone. He's never owned a cell phone. Glenn's rich enough that he's got people that have cell phones, but Glenn himself does not own a cell phone.
That's my goal in life right there, Chad.
He doesn't have
I want to
one.
be so wealthy, I don't need a cell phone. People around me can have cell phones. That sounds fun.
He's got people. He's got people that have cell phones. Glenn has an iPad. I don't even pick up my iPad. There's one sitting here, though. Glenn's got an iPad if he needs to look at emails or he needs to scan news or something like that. You'll see Glenn with his iPad. But Glenn, he doesn't have a cell phone. Doesn't own one. If somebody needs, if Tanya, his wife, needs to get in touch with him, she calls Craig. And Craig tells Glenn, what a life. I don't know. Most of us could survive that way. But I remember, I always call these things cameras that you can actually talk to people on. Because this is more of a camera than anything else for us. And now with the advent of Chat GPT, see, that's scary, because with the AI stuff that's coming along, we don't have to think critically anymore. We just ask a question and we give this big detailed answer. And our brains, you talk about working out physically, we're not working out our brains mentally anymore. We're going to turn into mush. So in essence, in summary, what we're doing is we're becoming an easily shaken people. We talk about a kingdom that can't be shaken. We're becoming easier and easier to shake because we're turning into mush. We're turning into mush. So I'm encouraging people, can we please become unshakable people? Because I think if you're a part of an unshakable kingdom, that produces unshakable people. Now, not arrogant people, not just, the loudest voice in the room, but stable people. Because we're living in a world that panics. I want to be calm. People that despair, I want to be hopeful. People that want to compromise to get along. And I want to be faithful, right? So I want to be that person who can endure the shaking that comes through. And unfortunately, everything in our world these days is making us easier and easier to shake.
I agree. I want to go back. You mentioned the Epstein files. And I actually, Chad, in our brief history of knowing each other, I didn't pick that up. I would, I didn't even, when I go back to when you first came across my timeline on X, it was a tweet regarding Charlie Kirk.
Mm.
And I know a lot's gone on since and before then and everything else. I didn't know that you'd gone to Washington for the Epstein files. Could you walk me through that? Because
Sure.
if you follow anyone on social media, they certainly made theories up about, I didn't realize it was you, but of the social media people that went there and had the book and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't realize I'm sitting talking to a guy that actually got to go there.
Yeah, I think there was 16 of us that were there. I think there were 16 of us, and we all know these people. And I've known many of them for years and years, dear friends that I've known. We were invited to go up and sit down and just hear from J.D. Vance and Carolyn Leavitt. Those were the two that were named. Just talk about what the policy goals are of the administration. And so we go up there, and as we're sitting in the Roosevelt Room, which is the conference room right next to the Oval Office, Carolyn Leavitt comes in, not Carolyn Leavitt, I'm sorry, Pam Bondi, Attorney General, comes in with Kash Patel, Director of the FBI, and she drops these notebooks in our lap and says, "Don't look at them. There's really, don't look at them. This is the first part that we're going to release." And so then the president comes in. He wants us to come in the Oval Office and visit with him. So we're taken immediately away from these notebooks because we're all going, "What's in this book?" Right?
Before you go any further,
yeah.
Have you ever met Trump before this?
Yes. And so I'd been with Trump. I'd never been with Trump in the Oval Office. I'd been with him at various events, and I'd been with him at Mar-a-Lago. And Trump's an interesting character, which means a whole other topic. I mean, he's something else, which I know everybody's got their opinion on him. But we go in the Oval Office, and it's a little bit, people who have criticized us for that day, I've often said to people who would listen to me long enough, I'd say, okay, you put yourself in my shoes. You put yourself in my shoes. I'm sitting there with the Vice President of the United States around a table of 16 people, and he's telling us his vision. And he's telling us, what he's thinking about the country and this administration. And then President Trump walks in the room and says, "I got a call with NATO. It's going to take me 2 minutes. And then I want you to come in the Oval. I want you to come in the Oval." Well, I don't know about you, but not everybody gets invited by the president himself into the Oval Office. You go in, it's a little overwhelming. And then we come back out, and Bobby Kennedy comes in and meets with us. Marco Rubio comes in and meets with us, and it's a veritable who's who kind of few hours. And meanwhile, we still have this notebook sitting in front of us that we've been told, don't look at this yet. Don't look at this yet. And so we're excited, and they walk us out of a different door from the door. At the end of the day, we walk out a different door than the one we came in. And by the way, you don't have your cell phone in the West Wing. You have to check that in a locker. And so you're completely in the dark. And they walk us out, and we walk out in front of all of the press, and they're snapping pictures. So the mainstream media is out there snapping pictures. And so what happens, they're going to put the pictures out there that make us look like we're carrying water for the administration with these notebooks. Well, immediately I get back to my hotel room, and I'm thumbing through the book, and I go, well, there's nothing really new here. And so now it's mainstream media. It's big noise. And so within hours, I'm in the D.C. studio for Newsmax. I do Mercedes Schlapp's show. I do Chris Salcedo's show. I'm on Ben Ferguson's podcast. I'm doing all these media hits, all within hours of receiving this notebook and basically saying there's nothing in here. Well, we're meanwhile getting crucified. And I'm talking about not by the left. We're getting crucified by people on the right, our people that, and they're, and I'm going, how would you have responded differently? Like, they walk us out in front of the media. The pictures are being snapped. We're holding these notebooks. Tell me how you would have handled it differently, because we weren't allowed to, we didn't have the time to go through the notebooks to see what was in there. But here's the mainstream media feeding you a narrative that says these people are hiding something for the Trump administration. And I keep saying, I'd love to know how anybody would have behaved differently, because, if hindsight's 2020, I'd love to have been able to take in that notebook and toss it back at Pam Bondi and say, there's nothing in here. I'm not walking out with that thing. And so there's a lot of, there's a lot of speculation. Of course, what somebody says on the internet lives forever. And so again, we kind of became public enemy number one. And people said, well, when are you going to talk about what's in that notebook? Well, for the last year, I've talked about it ad nauseum. I was talking about it on mainstream media literally within hours of receiving it. But again, people aren't privy to that because they didn't go out and research it to try to see what's Chad Prather ever said about what was in those notebooks. It's there. I also went live twice on my massive Facebook profile, and I went page by page through what was in there. But people didn't see that, right? If you did, you did. If you didn't, you didn't. You can't control who sees what. And so through all of that stuff, we became, you can go back and watch my series. I think it's still on YouTube. You can go back and watch the 6-part series that I did back in 2020 about Jeffrey Epstein when I was with The Blaze, the expose. We reveal things about Jeffrey Epstein that people didn't talk about. They didn't know about. People didn't know about Zorro Ranch. They didn't know about what was going on in New Mexico. They didn't know about his eugenics projects. They didn't know about them naming a research wing after him in Harvard. They didn't know about him being a 8th grade substitute math teacher and how he peddled influence in order to get rich. They didn't know about a lot of those different things. He was still this mysterious creature who was accused of all these atrocious things and had this private island, and celebrities were probably connected to him, but they didn't know a lot of those things. So I was at the forefront of revealing a lot of those things. And I go from that to now I'm trying to hide something for the administration for this, and kind of getting lumped into these atrocious, abhorrent crimes. And so that's when I stepped back and said, okay, this system that we keep embracing of constant noise and headlines and trends, it's going to kill all of us. Like, it's literally going to kill all of us because people don't know what to believe. They're being told what to believe. So here was an administration that said, we're going to bypass the mainstream media. We're going to make it available for some of you creators and influencers and voices to actually hear what we're doing before the mainstream media does. And then we got crucified for walking out of the White House and doing that exact thing. And the mainstream media was able to frame the narrative for everybody and say, this is what you need to believe about these people. Now, I remind everybody, historically, for 20 years, I've made a living being a comedian and a musician. I am not a politico. I'm not a sociologist. I'm not a political science guy. I'm a comedian. I talk about conservative issues. I make fun of a lot of political issues. I'm a comedian, but somehow I was supposed to be the voice of authority and expertise on all these things. And again, you realize you're getting chewed up by a system. And everybody that's listened to me about this, I'm telling them, you keep embracing this. That's a kingdom that's being shaken. Eventually, it's going to grind you to pieces as well.
What are your thoughts on, first off, I had no idea, I knew you'd work for The Blaze, and I remember that part of your story, but walking through different things, Epstein, I mean, you get crucified for being there, but then you fast forward and you get to see, more documents released. I think, what was it, 3 million the last time? I want to say.
For all I know, we're up to 6 million. It could
sure.
be a billion at this point.
Did you see the Clintons get interviewed?
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on that?
Well, the Clintons are scum. I mean, there's not a moral fiber in their body. There's just not. And I know people that have had to protect them on Secret Service details. I know, my friend Buzz Patterson, who carried the nuclear football for 2 years in the Clinton White House. He'll tell you story after story. He's written a book about it, actually. He has no problem talking about it. Great interview. You should have him on, by the way, Sean. He'll do it too. Buzz Patterson's incredible interview. But he says not a moral fiber in their body. So, the way they frame the Clintons, and there's a part of me that thinks the huge secrecy around the Epstein stuff is in a large way by people on both the left and the right to protect the Clintons. And I don't know exactly why that is, but I think that the Clintons are a huge piece of that puzzle that is being protected. And so to see that testimony that they did, and we could pick it apart, and people have done that a lot, but to see the testimony that they did, it's just one more lap to nowhere. They look guilty. I mean, Hillary Clinton gets mad at a line of questioning, gets up, storms out because she's basically proving that she's the one who's in control. And then she's going to come out there and refer to him as Epstein. Oh, I mean Epstein. That's on purpose. Somebody coached her to do that so she looks unfamiliar with the subject. And then Bill Clinton, who's laughing about old pictures that are popping up, that type of behavior, the body language of that. And they're trying to make him look a little more frail with the shaking and all the stuff. They're trying to look like him. Like, Joe Biden got away with a lot of stuff because they said, well, he's not mentally competent enough to stand trial and testify, but yet he can run the United States of America. None of that makes sense, but that's what they try to do. So it's the same old game. They want to try to make Bill look, frail, and he's the old guy that's just getting picked on now by the system. But what I've said over and over about these so-called Epstein files is it's been filtered through so many fingers for so long. The whole deal was mishandled back when the trial on Epstein was happening in Florida. Pam Bondi, by the way, was the attorney general of Florida at the time. I'm no fan of Pam Bondi. You'll find out from talking to me at any length of time. And I think the whole deal was mishandled then. Everything's been mishandled. There's a lot of lies, but there's nothing. You can read the Epstein list. You can read the emails. You can see the people that get named. Okay, so, and they're like, well, I don't understand why people aren't being arrested. Why aren't people being hauled off in handcuffs? Where's the wood chipper? Okay, we should have just learned. Critical thinkers would know that we should have just learned from what happened with the mistakes made in the Diddy trial, the Sean Combs trial, is they bit off more than they could chew. They didn't have actionable evidence. And although he did get sentenced, he did not get what he should have gotten because he wasn't on trial for being a vile human being. You go on trial and you get indicted and you get prosecuted and you get sentenced for having broken the law in a way that can be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt. You can read all those Epstein files. That doesn't mean there's actionable evidence in there that somebody can actually take to an attorney general, take to a court and say, okay, this person needs to be arrested and tried for this crime. So again, are there vile, evil people out there? 100%. We live in a vile world. It's a gross world. But can you prove it? Can you prove that these people did these things? And this is where the cry for the Epstein list, I believe, was mishandled. Because if you do it prematurely and you do it in the wrong way, well, now you've got 6 million pieces of paper out there. Well, who's going to filter through all of that stuff? Who's going to go in and find the actionable evidence in there? Nobody, because we're not capable of doing that. And so if you look at it, what do you intend to investigate? And the biggest conclusion that I come through all of this is Jeffrey Epstein was not the disease. He's the symptom. When Jeffrey Epstein was removed from the scene, someone came and filled that vacuum. Those same crimes are happening today. We know they are. We know that human trafficking is happening. We know that pedophilia is happening. We know that children are disappearing. We know that all of these atrocities still exist in our society. The Department of Homeland Security's got 7 agents working on that. Out of 339,000 missing children, that are I should say not missing children, exploited children who have sets of images on the internet, on the dark web, that are pornographic. Out of 339,000, 8,000 of which are speculated to be right here in the United States. The Department of Homeland Security only has 7 agents working on that. Something about that doesn't line up. That doesn't make sense. Why are we not exposing the crime that's existing today? We want to keep digging up the crimes that happened yesterday. What about the crimes happening today? Because again, we've already messed up. We messed up with the Diddy trial. We messed up with the Epstein trial. We messed up with all of these things. Why is it not being uncovered today? We're not putting the energy, the manpower, and the resources behind ending this thing because we're protecting a system that goes on regardless of who's in power, who's running the thing. And again, Epstein was not the disease. He was the symptom. Why aren't we doing something about that? That's the vile aspect and the injustice of the world that we're living in today.
I was just going to say on the Clintons being interviewed, while I sat there and watched, I'm like, it would have been great to have a blue-collar worker doing the interview instead of a lawyer.
Isn't that the truth?
like just a common person sitting there. And when Hillary Clinton's doing all she was doing, when Bill Clinton's laughing at the pictures and stuff, it would just be great to have somebody sitting beside that lawyer. Can I take over now? All right, Bill. And I think that would have been enjoyable. Before I let you out of here, you were talking this morning, pulling them back to some things from the Bible and maybe not lighter topics by any stretch of the imagination, but you said a line that I found I'm careful about because my journey in faith, although I do a show and I've become more public with it, it has taken time because I was very protective of it. And you said worried about smuggling your own soul into heaven this morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I am pretty worried about smuggling my own soul into heaven. I want to make sure that I'm protecting my relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because that's a very intimate time for me. But that line stood out to me this morning. As a guy who does, Before the Noise and talks openly about the Bible, I thought I'd just let you expand on that.
Yeah, something that I've said in recent days, and I still contend with this. Jesus didn't die. You're not saved just to go to heaven, right? The purpose of your salvation isn't to take you to heaven. That's a byproduct. It's part of it. You're saved for so much more, and that so much more is that I am to be consistently pursuing that intimate relationship with the one who not only created me, breathed life into me, the reason for my existence, the one who by the word of his power holds all of my life together. I want to be in intimate relationship with him who died for me, who turned death's sting into a shadow so that I don't get hit by the substance of death. I get hit by the shadow of death. And I'd much rather get hit by the shadow of the truck than the substance of the truck. And I want to look for a city with foundations whose architect and builder is God, Hebrews 11:10. And I want to find my stability from that future certainty, but knowing that I am in a relationship with one who's deserving of my radical worship, my radical devotion, my radical love. And rather than being consumed with what the world demands, the chaos of rage and fear and tribalism and division, I want to be a part of that kingdom that produces something different. Gratitude. Why? Well, it's contagious for one thing. I think when people see that in you, you're not just smuggling your own soul into heaven. You've got other people that want to come along with you. And I think that the believer in Christ knows something that the world doesn't know. And that's the story's already been decided. Christ wins, right? The kingdom advances. The temporary shaking is clearing the stage for what can't be moved. So I'll say another radical thing to that point of not just smuggling your soul into heaven. Everything in your soul right now is not going to heaven. There are things that God is going to chisel off of you, sanctify and set apart. He's going to do something in you radically. He's going to shake off all the extra, chisel off all the stuff that doesn't belong. Politics, money, reputation, the tribe, those things, some of those things, my flesh, my sin, my selfish, independent negation of the will of God in my life, SIN, selfish, independent negation, so that only Christ remains. And that kingdom that I'm chasing, rooted in truth, is going to determine whether that shaking that happens is going to destroy me or purify me. And so I want to present myself pure before him, because if he's holy, I want to be holy. And if I'm going to claim his name, I want to claim his character. I want to be able to demonstrate his character. And so to that, I think we're going to bring this world back into some kind of alignment. Listen, we don't even, you talked about COVID. I mean, we don't trust the medical industry. We don't trust the educational industry. Name an institution we trust. I mean, any of it. We don't trust the justice system. We don't trust the media. None of it. Trust is gone. It's evaporated. People are angry. People are afraid. Everything's being shaken. We see that. Well, rather than just trying to smuggle my own soul into heaven, get it across the border, and let's see if I can become a refugee in heaven, I'd much rather walk in there like I belong. I'd rather walk in there like I'm part of the family and bring as many family members with me along the way. I think that matters. I think it gives meaning to life. And I think it's a whole lot more fulfilling than the anguish and the exhaustion that we're living with right now from doing it the other way.
Yeah, I put my trust in the big guy upstairs. That's
Yeah.
where it's went, right? So like you lose trust in everything, Chad. Everything you just said. Yes, you're like, I don't trust fully what I used to. So where does that trust gone?
Mm.
The big
Well, I
guy
can tell you,
upstairs.
people are more tired than ever before. And I mean, people that want to push back and say, well, I'm not so interested in this faith or God stuff. Well, just answer that question. Are people more tired than ever before? They're exhausted. The news cycles, the headlines, the chaos, the noise, it's ruined people. They're living in fear. They're cloistered. They hate the people around them. They drive home after work. Their garage door goes up. They pull in. The garage door comes down, and then they relate to the world with the internet. They don't even know their neighbors. Don't even know their neighbors. And I mean, that's a reality. And that's the result that this world wants. That's the chaos. That's the result it wants. And we got to break that cycle.
Well, Jesus breaks that cycle.
Absolutely. But we're his ambassadors, right? We to the degree that we're aligned with him and we're his representatives, and we are those agents of that kingdom, and we've got to be the ones, and we're going to live it by demonstration, and I think that's what makes the difference. That's why thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth, even as it is in heaven. It's an unshakable kingdom.
Chad, appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to meeting you in person here in just a couple weeks. And
We're gonna have fun.
Oh yeah, anyone coming to Cornerstone, you're not. Chad's just the tip of the iceberg, in my opinion. There's a lot of wonderful speakers coming, and looking forward to finally meeting you in person. Thanks again for hopping on today.